Hi guys, I just wanted to quickly go over some things. This is going to be a bossing guide because there's a lot of people complaining about certain bosses and finding certain things quite difficult in certain mechanics. But before I go through some of the footage to show you, I wanted to talk about a few things. So first of all, I don't want to assume that you know things or assume that you don't know things, so I'll just explain this anyway. But a lot of the time I might talk about this power sliding here, or this slide cancelling, or whatever you want to call it, power hopping, bunny hopping. It's basically a short slide cancelled with a jump, and it just gives you a little bit of, it gives you more momentum and more speed than just simply running. You can do it backwards or sideways at exactly the same speed, so it's a really useful tool against bosses. It's how you're going to position around a lot of their attacks quite often. It's really important to get to know that mechanic. Secondly, these clips were all in-game clips, so I'm not necessarily going to be catering specific moves to what I'm talking about, because the gameplay and what I'm talking about are two separate entities. And I wanted to do it that way because it kind of shows me messing up, even though I know exactly how to fight them. I don't want you to take it for granted that once you know these strategies everything's free. The bosses are still quite difficult, well they still can be quite difficult, especially if you're not paying attention, and no one's perfect, so just keep grinding away and keep learning. Just two other things is all of the footage is using Commando because it's the fairest. It's the one that it doesn't get any iframes, it doesn't get any additional aggro or anything like that, so the bosses are always just focusing on you. So I thought it was important to show that rather than someone in the comments pointing out, but you're Guardian, you're just pressing shield through that. It doesn't really matter what you do. You know, Commando doesn't have that option, so it's just the rawest and fairest, as I say. And then finally, all the footage as well is on Hero 6. That's the highest difficulty, so the bosses are hitting the hardest, they have the most health, and most aggression, so their re-attack time and how hard they come at you basically is the highest that it can be as well. So you can't say that one, so it shows that the strategy works at all difficulties. It's not going to be harder or easier to do that strategy on standard, for instance. So taking all that into mind, I hope you enjoy some of these clips. As I say, they're not exactly my best fights. Some of them aren't even particularly clean, and hopefully the audio is understandable going with it. I'm not necessarily the best at doing these guides, so let's hop into it. So first we have Billy Boone. He has, what, 4 basic attacks and 2 gimmicks. So his attacks are lasers that he shoots from his shoulder cannons. It's quite an obvious animation before he starts that. To get around that, I normally just jump to the left or to the right depending on where I'm positioning, where he's shooting, and then just stand off to the side of the lasers. Very easy to avoid. Then he has a move where he runs up and tries to slap you. Best way to avoid this is just to slide jump around the side of the arena, not directly off the edge. We'll go over why you don't do that in a second. He has a stunning orb that he shoots at you. This is where he reaches out his hand forward, and again it's quite an obvious shooting animation, and he'll shoot 1, 2, or sometimes I think I've even seen 3. So always make sure you're moving for that. To avoid that, you can literally just walk left or right. It doesn't even matter if you're using a heavy weapon, as long as you don't have the stone block, you can just avoid it by just walking. And then finally he has rockets or bombs that he shoots out the top. Again, that's where he will close up both of his guns on top of him, and then they'll start to point up. That's how you know when he's going to start doing that, and then that'll shoot to the left and to the right, and then you just want to time your jump so that you're jumping over the shockwaves in a pattern. Then we go on to his gimmicks. Around the full outside of the arena there's lava or burning area, so try to stay on the actual battle arena, because otherwise you take damage and get knocked into the air. His second gimmick is a bit more tricky, where you can't stand too close to him, otherwise a bar starts to fill up, and you'll see that during the gameplay up ahead. And then when you get in below a quarter health, he then drops to the floor, and damaging him fills up this explosive meter, and if you don't turn off the switch on his back before that reaches 100%, he'll just blow up and you'll lose, no matter how much health you have or how much damage you've dealt. So now we'll just go through the fight and I'll showcase the moves that I've just talked about. So the fight opens out, shoots his lasers, just hop to the left as mentioned, jumping over those, keep pressing the whole time. He shoots his bombs, these can shoot 3 times, just short hop over each one in the middle, again lasers, move around to the left of it. Again, he shoots 1, 2, I make a mistake here by double jumping, that should have been singular jumps. Slide jump away from the slap, jump over. Again, you can avoid the stun just by strafing, switch him off at the back, strafe past the stun, and he's done. Next we have Diggy Mole. Diggy Mole only really has 3 attacks. One is he comes up in one of the corners and starts to shoot a barrage attack. Best way to avoid this is literally just walk left or walk right depending on what gives you the most space. After a couple of seconds of shooting non-stop he will pause and he'll either then go underground or start shooting again. He can do this pretty much as many times as he'd like, so don't ever get caught out, always carry on strafing. The best bet when he stops shooting is to side jump or side slide to the opposite direction that you've been walking, and that way if he starts shooting again then you'll be heading in the other direction where there's now even more space and you won't have got hit by the barrage on the way. Then he has a move where he just charges at you. Again, if you just slide jump you can just get out the way of that and then damage him as he goes past you. And then finally he comes up in the middle and does regular shockwaves. These can be either just simply jumped over, or if you're feeling confident you can jump on top of him, you can bounce off him once he's already up. Just don't be in the middle when he actually comes up because that can damage you. He then also has 2 gimmicky moves where he goes underground and moves around. On top of that, every now and again when he gets to a section when he is underground he can throw out 3 mines. These mines can be shot but most of the time it's not necessary. There are only a few locations Diggy Mole will ever actually come up, so there's always at least 3 or 4 spots that you can stand in that will be safe from him coming up from underneath you and damaging you, so always be aware of where you're standing. Again, we'll go into the clip and we'll see how it goes. Diggy Mole's going to start with a charge. I can just walk out the way of that, I don't actually need to slide jump even though I'm using a heavy weapon. And digs through, comes out with a barrage of attacks. Again, just walking sideways for this. And slide out of the way in the opposite direction because that's where the space is. I screw up my double jump there because I should have just jumped once. I only expected 2 shockwaves, but he can do more than that, as many as he wants sometimes. And again, just kind of very generic Diggy Mole play. Like, I've only added this into the guide because I wanted to do all bosses, but he is by far the simplest. It's mostly just strafing one direction or another through all of his attacks and then just jumping over his wave attack. If you do get caught by this barrage, you can die almost instantly, especially on Hero 6 with sunglasses. But other than kind of being cheesed by anything like that, then he is just very easy. And I apologise for the audio in the background, that was me streaming at the time when I was fighting this. It's just Diggy Mole being quite awkward. Next we have my least favourite boss, so the commentary on this one might be a bit biased in all honesty. He has 4 main attacks and 2 gimmicks. His primary attack that tends to deal me quite a lot of damage because I've timed it badly is his larger hand will spawn a large laser that charges up and then he'll start to spin round. When he goes enraged he'll spin basically as many times as he wants and you just have to keep the timing perfect every time. Best strategy for this tends to be following the direction that he's spinning because that gives you the most time until you have to jump again, and then just repeatedly timing a double jump to jump over the laser. Supposedly it is possible to single jump over it, but I've never been able to do it, but I tend to be able to do it without taking damage with a double jump, so that should be fine. In his second attack he will spawn 3 lasers out of his hand with 3 fingers. These tend to be in a triangle shape around you. You can either step out of it quickly because at the start of it doesn't have any hitboxes, or if you're slower like me you can just jump diagonally out of the area that he's threatening and you pretty much never get hit by this attack. And his third move is a little bit annoying. It's where he spreads fire in a cone out in front of him. You tend to want to try and make sure that you're controlling where he puts down these cones, so you're trying to stay close to the fire that he's just placed. So if he chooses to place another one, that you're cutting off less of the area, because he will only ever cover about half the arena. You don't want to check a flag like I end up doing in the clip that I'm about to show. Then his final attack is actually a mortar attack. This causes people a huge amount of issues because it's one of the few attacks in the game that actually tracks where you're moving. So if you move to the left and you keep moving to the left in the same trajectory, it will always hit you. So your best bet is to either stand still and then move after it's shot, or go in a direction until it shoots and then go in the opposite direction. This is what I normally do, but it can help sometimes to slow your gameplay down and not press anything. His two gimmicks you don't tend to run into as often as you do with some of the other bosses. It'll only happen if you're trying to melee him up close, because then a laser saw will appear at his base and do you a large chunk of damage. Or if you try and bounce on his head, at which point he'll stun you and do a huge amount of damage if you land in a bad spot. So try to avoid doing that. This clip is almost a perfect example of how not to fight him. I end up concentrating far too much on the mechanics of the commando and using hot potato than I do the actual boss. So he starts off doing just a rapid spin that goes on for way too long, and as you can see I just do the strafing along the same trajectory tactic, and then miss time landing as he does the fire and lands straight in it. He then starts to do another spin, and I'm wary that I can't just strafe all the way around him because there's fire. I get caught out by his first mortar because again I'm jumping too much. I then slide straight into where he's putting fire because I haven't controlled where he's putting that, and I end up with what I can only describe as a nuclear sign. He's now putting down more fire. Again, I just screw up, land in it and get the kill, but take a lot of damage. This is not a good fight for me. Next we have Judgeball. Judgeball is by far my favourite fight in the whole game. A lot of people complain about him being too difficult, and I just don't see it. He's so much fun. He has 4 main attacks and 2 gimmicks. His first attack that most people complain about is when he goes into a gun mode. He shoots 2 lasers down in a cone shape, so he doesn't shoot directly in front of him, they go out from a cone from him outwards towards the arena walls, and 2 bullets that follow a very similar pattern, just slightly closer. He then shoots a rocket or a grenade up into the air that is aimed directly at you, and then he has a shockwave that hits the floor periodically as well. Now the lasers and the small bullets, you can dodge those simply by not moving. You don't have to strafe at all. What most people do is they just try and run like hell in one direction, and that's how you take damage from Judgeball. You just do very, very small movements during this stage. You have to move a little bit left or a little bit right because of the grenade that goes up, but ultimately you just sidestep slightly, then jump over the shockwaves, slide step sideways, jump over the shockwaves, and rinse and repeat until the gun mode is over. Very, very easy attack to avoid. Then he has a spinning attack where he spins and releases loads and loads of grenade balls. These bounce around and project outwards from him. This isn't necessarily the easiest, this is probably the most RNG boss part of any of the fights, but you tend to be able to fight it just by positioning yourself next to the wall, and the first 2 balls that come out, just stand between those and you should be mostly safe, unless you are stood underneath him when he starts it, but ultimately that's your best bet of avoiding. You can jump over them, you can find an easy path through them when he does it, but your best bet is stand at the edge of the arena and just watch where the first 2 land, and yeah, stand between those 2. Then he has an attack where he shoots a laser at the floor, which is, it's not a risky one at all, but he also throws down 2 magnets. These magnets will grab hold of you and will hold you in place if you don't kill them quickly, but they take what, 100 or 200 damage before they break. It's quite easy to break them. You don't have to break both of them at the same time. You can break one to set yourself up an easy path, just slide jump away from the other one, and then just repeatedly slide jump backwards while shooting him in the crit spot, and that mode is the best mode for dealing all your damage to Judge. Then finally, one that will catch me out every now and again if I haven't positioned great for it, where he'll just he'll close up and he'll just shoot straight at you. He'll just shoot himself. You can normally just slide jump out the way of this or slightly step out the way. He normally hits me on the way back if I've jumped out the way or something like that, but that's probably the move that catches me out the most, but it also doesn't do much damage. Now, just to quickly wrap up, we'll just quickly go over his gimmicks because this has already been a very long clip and chat about Judgeball. So his two gimmicks are, he's a flying boss. It's not necessarily a gimmick, but that's what it feels like. That's his gimmick. That's what sets him apart from other bosses so far. And he has a move where he'll set down 2 shield bots. These will put a shield around the Judgeball, and you can't break the shield just by shooting it. You have to break the generators. These don't take much damage, but they can be a nuisance if you don't have a build that's doing enough damage and you let them build up. But just kill those quickly, and then you can go back to DPS and Judgeball. So let's chat about Judgeball. He opens up with the magnet and laser, so I shoot the closest one to me and start heading around the arena just doing as much damage as possible. Again, that's my favourite one because it's always easy. Sorry for the cut there, I leveled up mid-fight, so it's a bit jarring. He does the spinning attack. I'm far enough away that it doesn't bother me. He puts a shield down. I'm able to kill the generators while dealing with this, because as I say before, that move is very easy to deal with. You just keep jumping. Throws another magnet down. Just slide jumping backwards, DPSing it. Do get hit by his charge, which is unfortunate. Drops a shield again, drop the shit. Kill those. As I say, stand between the first 2 that come out, and then Bob's your uncle. He's dead. It's very, very easy. On to CaterCoaster. I don't enjoy this fight. I find it's a huge DPS check, and there's so many weapons in the game that just don't deal very well with him, so I tend to have to try and cater what weapons I'm going to be using specifically just to try and counter this boss if I get it. But we'll go over his moves. He rides around on the rails at the top of the arena, throwing out like sticky bombs behind him onto the coaster, so if you're riding the tracks behind him, they'll blow you up and they'll change your trajectory as well on the track. Then he throws out mines that he sticks onto the wall that will shoot lasers across the arena. Rarely ever a threat, but they're a bit annoying. And then he shoots out lock-on rockets that just come out and track you. He then also has a kind of charge attack, so if you're going towards him on the rails, he'll charge and knock you off. This fight, I've still not found 100% way that I'm comfortable fighting him. It tends to just be very RNG, very much reacting to where he's putting the bombs, where he's putting the lasers, and trying to avoid the lock-on rockets while trying to shoot him at the same time. It's not a fight that you can get down to a fine art. There's a few different ways I've tried it, there's a few ways I've seen other people trying it, but it's never something that you can repeat because the mines are always going to be in different locations. He's very RNG based. Now his gimmicks are fairly obvious. You've got one which is he rides a rail, as I've mentioned. The other one, not so obvious, is there's actually a lava or a ooze or something rising from the floor that damages you. This cuts off your options quite drastically, and as I say, this is why it's a DPS check, because eventually there's no real safe place to be. You're stuck on the rail with the boss, taking potential damage of RNG spawns. So we'll go into and see how I deal with the fight. Probably won't be great, but it's my least favourite fight, it really is. So in this video I'm somewhat forced to fight him up close and on the rails because of my weapon choices. So I immediately move over onto the jump pad, get up close to him and start hammering him as hard as I can. Now I choose to stick to his thumb here, hoping he doesn't put down any bombs and get fortunate. And my whole game plan is just to try and stay as close to him as possible while avoiding his RNG spawns, hoping that nothing hits me. And this is how I fight him most of the time. I unfortunately missed the rail there. RNG's on my side this time when I kill him, but playing like that I could easily have died myself. On to Beetle Royale. I actually really enjoy this fight. It's also one of the ones that I've probably spent the most time in practicing and learning due to certain challenge runs. Again, it has a couple of gimmicks and 4 primary attacks if my memory serves me correctly. One is where it just sends a whole heap of laser barrages at you. These are quite difficult to avoid if you panic. You have to take it slow, or as slow as it will let you. The pattern that it shoots is always different, but it will always shoot the same variants of lasers. So you have two that shoot at either side of you. You can avoid those literally by standing still. He then has a vertical one that he can aim either low, so it will hit you if you don't jump, or it will send it high, so it will hit you if you jump. So you just have to read which version it is, and you have to either duck or slide underneath it or jump over it. Now, normally I see people taking damage from jumping too soon when fighting this and then getting caught out in midair, or trying to move around too much and getting caught trying to move sideways out of them. You can slide jump out of the horizontal ones rather than vertical ones, but it's not the easiest thing to do, and it does always depend on positioning. Then he has an attack where he will spin around and he'll come straight at you. This move will actually bounce off an object if it hits, so you can throw down a recon clone or something like that and it will just spin on it and you get free damage, or sometimes it will bounce off drones, so it's quite nice. But the best way of avoiding it is literally just to slide jump away and just make space. Then he has a move where he'll kind of fly up in the air and then start carpet bombing. He normally goes in an L shape. It's always random in which L shape he'll go for, but he'll rarely ever put the bombs directly at the edges, so you tend to be able to be safe if you go into the edge or kind of into the middle. But it's a risky move, and it's always, you have to read the situation. There's no strict right or wrong way of avoiding it other than walking into the bombs. You can shoot the bombs, so that is worth noting. If you do feel you're cut off, you can just damage the bombs and make yourself a little path. Then he'll shoot what look like rockets at you. These will stick to the wall of the ceiling, and then they'll turn into two different types of drones, either the mini flying drones that will chase and shoot you, or it will turn into the explosive lock-on drones that will just kamikaze into you. You can destroy those before they turn into drones. More often than not I just ignore them though, to be honest. His gimmicks, he actually kind of has three if we count him flying as a gimmick. His stage is set up on 3 separate floors, and on each floor there's, I think, what, 9 floor panels. I haven't actually counted, so that's a complete guess, so I do apologise that I didn't research that better. And he'll gradually destroy these. Destroying them will damage you, so make sure you don't stand on them when you see a red glowing square. You have to slide jump off those or just run off them quickly. And then you can drop down to the next level, which I often use to interrupt his attacks. But if you get all the way down to the last floor, he'll start breaking blocks, and then beneath there is a damaging field, so you'll take damage. So you don't want to drop down too much, so try and stay above the first floor if at all possible. That being said, I feel like I've missed something, but I'm not 100% sure, so we'll just move on to the clip, and I'm sure someone will shout at me in the comments for missing it. So let's get up to it. I do feel a bit bad about this clip because, as you'll see, I'm using lightning damage, which does make it slightly easier, so I can't probably show you everything, but we'll jump right into it. So he starts off by shooting some drones at me and then destroying 2 blocks. I then starts the laser barrage, I stun him, and he then carries on. I catch myself out and, as I said before, jump too early and take damage. And then he spins at me, and I took a load of damage from the drones as well. Managed to kill those with ricochet. He starts the bombardment run, stun him up again. Almost run into all the bombs, almost run off the map, but managed to stay on top of it. He spins at me and I'm just slide jumping, keeping the distance. He starts his barrage again. Looks like I forgot to talk about one set of lasers where he just shoots 1 vertically, not 2. There you go. Just calmly jumping over each one. Avoid the drones that he shoots from again. One last set of barrages. He destroys the block I'm standing on, so I choose to drop down and then kill him. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you enjoyed. I'm not very used to doing long videos like this, or large guides. The guides I've ever done in the past have all been quite short and sweet, so let me know how I did, what I could do better. I do want to get better at these, but I don't often get enough feedback to actually be able to grow, so it'd be kind of cool to know what I did wrong. But also, tell me if you learnt anything or if there's anything that you feel I missed. you don't need to drop a like or anything like that, or a subscription. I don't do it for that, but I mean, if you fancy it, go for it. Well, I'll still be making videos either way. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. Have fun.